Thanks for tuning in to this discussion of the 2025 Stardom 5-Star GP Finals. This memorable tournament, which featured 32 wrestlers in total, has given us potential Match of the Year and Show of the Year candidates, in addition to multiple breakthrough and career-changing outcomes. On August 23rd, 4 fighters, be they indomitable, hateful, high speed, or devilish, will do battle for the ultimate crown, but only one will wear it. For a tournament this insane, I need insane amounts of help. So my guest for today is Peps. Peps, how is your day going so far?
I'm doing great. We have like 2 hours after the last match of the Hurricane Hall show. And safe to say, you not only need to be like an insane help, but also you need someone that is insane enough to watch this whole tournament, because there were like a lot of matches and a lot of shows.
Everything in this tournament has been moving so quickly. My mind is racing. As you've said, we are just a few hours after the quarterfinals, the Korakuen Hall show, and I really don't want to fall victim to recency bias, but this honestly, I think, might be one of the best Stardom shows of the year. The match quality across the board was so very high. Very, very surprising for me. Final 4, but a very deserving roster of 4 wrestlers. Before we get into details and specifics and start building up our thoughts about the finals and the semifinals, can you just give me just some basic thoughts on the tournament up to this point, how you're feeling about it?
I mean, the match quality itself is like very good, even though I feel like, and that is a problem, that you have like 32 wrestlers in there. You have a lot of the same stuff in pretty much every match. Like the crowd brawls pretty much have been throughout the entire hate portion of every match, as well as Suzu and sometimes even Bozilla, when they just threw each other into the chairs and everything. There's like a spot after the 5th time on a show, you just can't see it anymore. And then they did it again on the next show and everything. And in general, like there were some spots that you, of course, have like seen 25 times. But otherwise, I feel like the wrestlers did their best to make themselves stand out in a field where it's really tough to stand out. Not only because, of course, there are a lot of wrestlers and a lot of matches, but also because all of these wrestlers have a certain quality to them. Like there's like, I would say out of maybe the rookies, but that is just not the role. And even they did like really well. There's like no wrestler, I would say, that totally fell off in terms of like performance compared to the others. And that is like a great achievement to show how great this roster is.
So I've got a couple of specific questions to ask you before we talk about what has just taken place at Korakuen Hall, the crazy play-in to get to the quarterfinals, the equally crazy set of quarterfinals, and this final 4 that will be staring each other down on August 23rd. So I've got a 2-pronged question for you. Firstly, I'd want to know what, for you watching this, has been the biggest pleasant surprise of the 5-star. It could be a performance from a wrestler. It could be like a result or something like that. And then also looking at what they've tried to do this year. We talked about the massive lineup, the 4-block setup, the way that the play-in and quarterfinals were sort of structured. Is there anything about any of that you think they should consider changing for next year? So just to reiterate, biggest surprise of the GP so far, and anything you think they should consider adjusting next time?
I will start with the adjustment because that's the easier one for me personally. I feel like the lineup is maybe a bit too big, but I can understand that you want to give all your women the spotlight, because the roster is, let's be real, the roster is too good for a 20 women lineup. Like if you have a 20 women lineup, you would need to leave out actual really good talents, unlike the G1 Climax, for example, or other tournaments in Japan. So I can understand that you go all in and say, okay, 32. But I personally would add, like, when that is my thing, I feel like the opening night and the nights where they had 12 matches or so on the card were like way too crowded. And that made matches that could have been better just not stand out as much. And I feel like a solution for that would be, and of course, you never know how possible that is, and if that's even worth it in terms of like a financial standpoint and everything, I feel like they need to add 2 or 3 nights more to the schedule, even though it would be it would be even more stressful and difficult to watch them. But I feel like it would help the matches itself to split up more. Like instead of 8 matches per show, you can maybe do 7 or 6 or so, and you have like a shorter card and everything like that. In terms of surprise, I mean, one of them is in the semifinal. I think that we will save for that, but I feel like the performance of Saori is the one I would point out to. She came in after a brutal knee injury and everything that she has suffered a couple of years ago and wrestled through it. And she was a wrestler that got a lot of critics from fans, rightfully so, in my opinion, for her performance. She was someone that the company always believed in and always gave bigger spots that maybe her performances didn't really back up. And that is like something that often happens in Joshi, that a wrestler gets a spot, a big spot, and they develop into the role over time. That has happened with a couple of wrestlers in the past as well. And I feel like she's the next one who has stepped up to the game to show, okay, she's more than just a solid powerhouse. And I feel like the company's investment in her is slowly paying off. And if she continuously performs like that, I don't think it's unlikely that she reaches the heights they want her to. And I feel like I have said openly, I want her to win a 5-star. And I think she's the perfect decision for it if the 5-star winner is challenging at one of the smaller shows instead of the Sumo Hall, which they kind of moved away in the past 2 years, with Suzu originally challenging in November and Maika last year challenging in September. And I feel like it was like, okay, maybe they're doing it again in September, but they of course went with B. Priestley there. So that kind of felt flat for Ami. But she was like someone I have considered, okay, maybe it's time just to go behind her, because the performances were there in the 5-star. She had the great matches pretty much against the big ones. And I feel like her and Kamitani would have been a fantastic match.
So it's a great opportunity for us to talk about the absolute cyclone that was the quarterfinals and the play into the quarterfinals before that at Korakuen Hall. Honestly, I feel like this was one of the most amplified crowds that we've seen at a live Stardom show. Every wrestler was on their A game. The matchups were out of this world, and so many people over delivered. I'm still coming to grips with everything that's happened. But for just right now, I'm going to talk about the quarterfinals. I'm just going to do a bit of a laundry list of what took place, and then we can start to piece it together. So firstly, there was a play-in, and the first match we saw at Korakuen Hall was Suzu Suzuki defeating Bozilla, her Mi Vida Loca stablemate, in the opening match of this show, really setting the tone. We also had across from them on the red side, Azumi defeating Hanan of Stars and eliminating one of the premier babyface wrestlers in the tournament. Going back to blue, we had Momo Watanabe defeating another babyface wrestler, the aforementioned SOUREI, in a match that showcased a lot of chemistry between the two. And bouncing back to the red side, we saw Rina defeating B. Priestley in an underdog performance that I believe this match even started with crowd chants for Rina, and that would not be the last time that took place. Again, this crowd was supporting a number of the wrestlers in a major way. So the play-in saw some interesting results. Suzu Suzuki, Azumi, Momo Watanabe, and Rina getting through. That brought us to the quarterfinals after the show's intermission ended, in which Saori Anou awaited the winner of Suzu Suzuki versus Bozilla, and Saori Anou defeated Suzu Suzuki in their one-on-one match. Saya Kamitani was awaiting the winner of Azumi and Hanan, and Azumi defeats the red belt champion Saya Kamitani to an immense ovation from the crowd. We also had the IWGP champion Sareee awaiting the winner of Momo Watanabe and Ami SOUREI. And after a number of different shenanigans taking place, Momo Watanabe defeats the IWGP champion Sareee, also to an absolute explosive ovation at Korakuen Hall. And finally, in the main event, Natsupoi awaited the winner of Rina and B. Priestley, and Rina, in her rematch in the 5-star against Natsupoi, defeats Natsupoi, moving on to the semifinals with the crowd at an absolute 100% level of support for her. These quarterfinals were absolute madness. So I know this is a difficult question, Peps. Going through those matches, the play-ins, the quarterfinals themselves, can you pick out a match, or if it needs to be a couple matches, that's totally fine. What do you think stood out the most, and why would you pick what you would pick?
I think you gotta talk about not only just the Azumi versus Hana match, but also the Azumi versus Kamitani match as two matches at once, because that is just a thing that just works together the best. Because Azumi's performance over the course of the two matches were kind of combined with each other. With the first one being this 10-minute sprint against Hanan, the other baby face on the side, with the winner, of course, facing the world champion, and then where Azumi just pretty much escaped barely with the numero uno. And then you had this match against the Red Belt champion, where you had the Queen's Quest history to all of that, and both of them just going absolutely nuts, in my opinion, the best match of the night. And the crowd just being also the most into it and everything. Like, this was, even though we will talk about Rina more in terms of breakout and everything, this was kind of a career-making night for Azumi, in terms of that she had two of her best performances she has had all year. I haven't been a fan of Azumi all year, to be fair. I feel like she has been very underwhelming in the big match situations, and she needed that kind of night for her, because ending a match where, while your theme plays, the crowd chants your name is something you don't often see in Stardom. Most of the time, if they chant their name, it's either during the match or during a promo, but not when the theme plays. And Azumi was able to get the crowd to a level where they were so into her that they chanted her name right after the finish. And I feel like that deserves a lot of credit.
That moment, I was just so overjoyed to see the crowd rally behind her so very strongly.
So Sold Out Hurricane is just, you can't have anything better for a show, especially with so many matches that have so much impact, because we had also had like a Hurricane earlier in the tour where they didn't sell out and everything, and it was still very loud. But compared to that, that is like a different level. And I feel like this is exactly what you want from a show that big, with so many deciding matches for an entire tournament, that I feel like this was the right decision to book. And in terms we can criticize all the wrestlers that shouldn't have been in because it's too many and everything, but alone for this show, it showed like that the idea they had to lay out the tournament worked completely.
So just to restate, from Cosmic Angels, we have Saori Anou. From H.A.T.E, we have Momo Watanabe. Those are the wrestlers representing the Blue Stars side of this bracket. And on the Red Stars side of the bracket, we have Azumi of Neo Genesis and Rina of H.A.T.E. There are a couple of parallels between this tournament and this year's Cinderella tournament. In both contests, our semifinals had a member of H.A.T.E make it through to that final four on either side. And in both competitions, Rina was one of the people competing in the semifinals. So a really big tournament year for Rina. Just a big everything for Rina. Great match performances, an absolute leveling up, an absolute star-making series of fights and events. And strangely, she is possibly the least likely tournament winner out of the four, but I can still picture her winning this tournament and challenging Starlight Kid with that win.
The semifinal matchups are super interesting, because if you look at how Taro Okada and the rest of the booking team has booked his tournament so far, like the Cinderella last year, the 5-star, the Cinderella this year, and the final, or the GP this year, there always have been, at least in the semifinals and the finals, always matches that have some kind of history to each other. With the Cinderella final last year in 2024 being Hana versus Ami Sourei, that was like kind of a feud at the time over the Artists of Stardom belts and the Future of Stardom belt making to the next level. Then, of course, the semifinals in the 5-star being Maika overcoming the Icon, and with the Ace overcoming the Icon, with Maika versus Mayu, and Hana versus Saya being a rematch from block stage. Then, of course, you had Kurara versus Rina in the Cinderella final being part of the big H.A.T.E versus Cosmic Angels feud. And this time, the one that sticks out to me as I wouldn't say a random semifinal, but I would say a semifinal that like nobody expected, is Momo Watanabe versus Saori Anou, because that comes out of the left field. And there's a logical path for Rina versus Azumi being a rematch from the block stage, with, of course, Azumi being the one that's stopped the momentum of Rina at first and now has a chance to stop it again to make it to the final. Meanwhile, of course, Rina wants the win back. But the Momo Watanabe vs. Anou match is so interesting to me on paper that it feels like there is something more to that I don't see yet. Because every match, every big tournament match I've booked so far had a reason for it. And this one stands out to me in that case that it doesn't feel like one so far.
This match does stand out in the sense that these two have not really crossed paths. They haven't exchanged a lot of words. The promo at the end of Korakuen Hall, the quarterfinals, implies that Saori Ano's not afraid of Momo trying to bring weaponry into the match. And Saori is stating that she has a personal motivation that is driving her to want to win this tournament. She did not reveal exactly what that was, but she's got her eyes on the prize, no doubt, with Momo Watanabe being a very, very dangerous roadblock potentially for her. So I have a question for you about this match. I got to kind of get a sense of what you're expecting will play out in this match, and how would you like Stardom to book this to make sure that it delivers on August 23rd?
I think the most important part about this is really figuring out what the opponent in the final is going to be, because a lot of that has to do with how they need to lay out this match. If the opponent in the final, and what the role of the opponent in the final will be. If the role of the final, like if it's going to be Rina, and I think it's very likely it's going to be Rina, then the match between Anou and Momo Watanabe needs to be as clean as possible. It doesn't need to come off as Anou overcame hate, because you want the crowd in the final to be behind Rina. And that should be the goal, because Rina is going to be the underdog in a final situation, regardless against who. And if it's going to be Anou in the final, and I feel like if Rina's in the final, that's a likely matchup, you gotta get the match going in a way where Anou looks strong, but it doesn't feel like, okay, she's the overcoming babyface over the heel Momo Watanabe. At the same time, if Momo wins this match, I also feel like it needs to be a little bit clean, because the last thing I think we want, especially after G1, is a final where we have filled with interferences. And a Momo Watanabe final where she has defeated Sareee in controversy fashion via 25,000 interferences and ref distractions, and then followed up by another 25,000 match distractions to get to the final in the first place, could feel flat in the final. Because you don't want to go overboard there, as the finals always feels like a match, personally to me, that is always clean and is always about, okay, the best one advances. Even last year when Kamitani made it to the final as the new H.A.T.E member, you would expect her to cheat. Like, she did not cheat at all. They wrestled it a clean match, pretty much, or like clean in terms of what H.A.T.E clean is, and you don't have interferences, ref bumps. So that is like all about, okay, who is going to be in the final on the other side to really say, okay, what needs to be happening in this match. But I think the perfect way this goes is like 12 minutes all out bomb fest, and one of the two escapes with the win.
There's another semifinal match for us to discuss, which, as you said, is a tournament rematch. This is going to be between Azumi and Rina on the red side of this tournament bracket. And I felt like their initial fight in the GP was possibly one of the best matches we saw all tournament. So what are you expecting to have happen here? And what would you like them to add to this to make sure that the match goes off without a hitch?
Yeah, I think they are in a much tougher spot, because their Kurikan Hall match was praised as one of the best matches of the tournament, and I would definitely go with that. That is one of the best in the block stage so far, or like was one of the best in the block stage. The issue that they have in Ottawa is, of course, that you don't know what kind of atmosphere you are having, and you are not going to match Kurikan in terms of the crowd reaction. That is just not happening. And Kurikan was rocking for Azumi versus Rina, and it felt like this big deal. Now they are in a position where we have seen this match already, and Azumi has a specific match style that she just works over and over again and twists a little bit. I don't know how fresh it's going to feel, and I think it could end up as a very good match that doesn't reach the heights of the Kurikan Hall match, which, of course, rematches are always tough to work, especially in such a short period, and especially when the match is going a similar length and everything. I personally would want them to add maybe a few more counters to it. Like, if you have seen certain certain counters in the first match, but this time Rina, for example, counters the counter originally that Azumi did and everything, that they add a little bit to, okay, they have studied the last match and know exactly what the counter is and counter that counter. That sounds more confusing than it is. But to make it seem like, okay, they've learned from the past match and just don't redo what they did in the last match. Because that is something that easily can fall into the trap too, that they just do the exact same thing, the exact same spots, and just twisting it up a little bit would help.
So what I want to talk about is the various arrangements of one-on-one finals matches that we could be seeing. And I'll start just kind of at the top with a possible final, and I'm not ruling anything out at this stage, but a possible final of Saori Anou facing Azumi. And this would be a revisiting of their duel that took place for the Artists of Stardom titles back in early February, where they were the two final competitors, the final face-off in that absolutely thrilling stretch of the last few minutes. This was a 5-star rated match for what it's worth. And while they don't have a ton of history that we can fall back on in recent time, this would be quite a pairing to make it into the finals. And I think the two of them do have an interesting dynamic in terms of their various styles. And in a big match between the two, I think there might be something there that could be very watchable. But just looking at that as a possible final, can you give me some of your initial thoughts?
I think it's definitely the unlikeliest one. So I'm glad you started with this one, because both of them have a clear other opponent on the other side with Azumi and Momo Watanabe and Sareee and Rina that make much more sense, not only from a story perspective and history perspective, but also from a match perspective. I just can't see an Azumi versus Sareee and match going longer than 12 minutes. And if we are going by last year's final, and I don't know if they will do it again, because last time they had two legit main eventers in the final that went like 28 minutes. I would assume we will go to somewhere between 18, 20 minutes again with those finalists, potential finalists. I just can't see how this will work out in a way where it's definitely the best choice to run as a final. As well as I feel like it would kind of, I wouldn't say diminish anything, but I feel like it would make it obvious who wins this one. Because I don't see Azumi, like an Azumi win of the 5-star would make the most sense over Momo Watanabe. And and I feel like Anou on the other side would easily be the favorite coming into this. And I feel like she's the favorite anyways, because she has the easiest connection to Kamitani, if we are going with that, with the Red Bull, of course. I don't know. I feel like it would be a cool final, but it would definitely not only be, in my opinion, the unlikeliest one, but also my least favorite one.
Those are strong points. And also the fact that Azumi already does have a win over Saya Kamitani now. So if she does want to challenge for that belt, she can already lay a claim to it. She herself is the only singles champion in this Final Four. So to give her that tournament accolade on top of everything might not be the best way to go. There's a few things to think about for sure. We'll up the ante a little bit, and we will now talk about Saori Anou facing Rina in the finals. And this is also a revisiting of a duel that they participated in earlier in the year. I believe it was in January when they fought each other for the right to challenge for the Wonder of Stardom title. And that was the first big upset on behalf of Rina that we saw all year, with a very crafty roll up that shocked the hell out of Saori Anou and shocked a lot of the people watching as well. So what can you tell me about this one? You said this is probably the more likely opponent facing Saori. So what else is on your mind when you think of these two names?
I think that is the perfect final to give Rina the best possible final possible. Like if Rina makes a final, this is the perfect way to show how she has developed as a wrestler over the past 8 months since she originally beat Saori Anou. At the same time, that also comes into play, Anou is kind of a losing streak in big title matches or in general in big matches, and it's also kind of started off with this loss against Rina this year. And that would kind of close the book between both characters and how they have developed in the past months. and shows perfectly how Rina has started her, I would even call it her magical run in January, and how she has developed into this believable 5-star finalist against the woman she originally defeated to start this run. And it would kind of close the chapter for this specific period of her career and start the new one of, okay, she's not the one on this magical run that shows everyone what she can do. But with the 5-star final, it would start a chapter of, she is the woman. She is going to be a top player, not in the future, but is one right now. And for that, Saori is, like, in my opinion, storyline wise, the perfect choice to do that. And at the same time, it would give Saori a good opponent to work her kind of match when she goes longer than 50 minutes, with Rina being one that can sell more on the ground than Azumi does, and can portray the babyface fire in a way that would help both of these wrestlers to get to the best quality-wise final possible for them.
That was a very, very clever insight that you made about the parallel trajectories with Rina on this upward trending path, and Saori, as you mentioned, very uncharacteristically enduring a string of losses, losing the Artist of Stardom title, losing all of the title shots that she's been a part of. And they're kind of meeting in the center, one on their way upward and one trying to slow their descent and not crash completely. So that would be a really, really fitting pairing to put at the end of this tournament. I'm going to have to think about that a little bit. Also, I think it was the Rina match against Starlight Kid in the GP showcased Rina selling a hell of a lot of damage to her leg due to submission attempts and limb work. And that might be something that could work their way into this match. You mentioned the duration of the match, which is a huge variable. So I'm starting to picture what this would look like. And it looks pretty good, I think, actually. Well, let's talk about the possibilities involving Momo Watanabe reaching the finals. Firstly, we will talk about the most story-rich possibility for her, the most bitter of enemies that she could be facing. Momo Watanabe versus Azumi, which I've heard a couple of people, placing this matchup on their wish list for a 5-star final. So what are your thoughts on this particular match? Just give me kind of a general overview, if you will, on what they could do with this being the final piece of the puzzle.
I think it has one massive flaw, and it is that both of these wrestlers have a clear storyline laid out post the GP. With Azumi, of course, being a strong champion, already have beaten Saya Kamitani to have a guaranteed title shot if she wants one. At the same time, Momo Watanabe has this feud going on, regardless what I think about it, about Sareee. So the only way I see this going is if Momo Watanabe wins this match and they are pulling at Batista. And Kamitani tries to convince her to go for the IWGP. And I don't know if they are going to do that, because that is too American for them, I feel like. So that is pretty much what keeps me away from this kind of match. And also, I feel like it wouldn't be a match that would feel so special on top, because we have the upset potential isn't there, in my opinion, because Azumi has beaten Momo Watanabe several times already in her career. I think the last time was last year in the GP on their opening night, as well as in one of the Cinderellas. I don't know, they have faced like 25 times. So it would be tough to tell me, okay, that is going to be the final. And it's something that sadly comes into case of Azumi. I feel like that in every situation, Rina would be the title finalist for her opponent.
Those are fair points. Now, we're going to get even quirkier by talking about another possible finalist with Momo Watanabe, which is her stablemate, another member of H.A.T.E, Rina. And I don't think I've ever seen them one-on-one fighting each other. Certainly not since they've, I don't know, actually. I'm trying to think back. I can't think of any true battling that has happened, at least over the last few years. But
it would be first time ever.
And can you remind me, if anything comes to mind, the last time we had two people from the same faction in the 5-star final?
Was it 2019?
Could
Konami,
have been.
Hana, Kimura?
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
And that is something I wanted to bring up with Rina, and I feel like that is something I've seen on Twitter. That how H.A.T.E went with her, and it's why I feel like we need, like, it's her first GP, right? And you couldn't always say, okay, she has the next year, she's 18 years old and everything. But I feel like the momentum of her is so hard, and there's so much storyline compelling to her, that I feel like her losing to Azumi, who in my opinion has the worst final in both situations, would be sad. And also I feel like there is and I don't want to say this to okay, we need to bring her up, but I feel like there is a connection to Hana Kimura that we have seen in the Wonder Star title match against Starlight Kid, that just would feel fitting after all of this. Like, she was Rina defeated B Priestley, and B Priestley was the one that defended successfully the World of Sun title against Hana Kimura when she won the 5-star GP. And I feel like there's also something, okay, that at that point, mini Hana is now defeating B Priestley. And with the momentum she has and everything, her going against Momo Watanabe, who can be the vicious killer and everything, from a crowd reaction standpoint, I feel like that would be the loudest how you can get behind Rina. Because Momo just beating the hell out of her not only sounds like a great match, but I feel like the crowd would be totally behind Rina. And it wouldn't lead to a situation where the crowd would maybe start chanting for Momo Watanabe because they want to see Momo Watanabe win, which we have seen in other tournaments. But also, Rina has been so over this tournament that she can, even in a hate versus hate matchup, can easily look like a babyface right off the gate. And that is my biggest argument for that Rina performance in the final with the crowd reaction could feel bigger than this one, even though I don't think it's as likely as Saori versus Rina.
I appreciate the fact that you're drawing so many connections between what's happened in the tournament so far, what has happened in years past, and what they might be able to string together on the 23rd. But I'm going to just default to you for a moment here. We're going to hypothetically give you the book and let you decide how the 5-star finals play out for the year of 2025. You've made a case for a lot of interesting ways to frame the final fight, who to place in the spotlight as the hero of the story, for lack of a better term. But Peps, if you could decide what takes place, how reality unfolds, and what the result of the 5-star final is, who's involved with it, and who gets their hand raised, what is the one that you would choose? What do you want to have happen the most? And what do you think is sort of would be the best moment that Stardom could engineer by the end of the night?
I think I've praised her so much that it's tough not to go with the way that you kind of also teased with Rina winning the GP and challenging and dethroning Starlight Kid for the One of Stardom title. Because there is, I know, like, I need to mention this, the 5-star GP is pretty much the biggest thing you can win in Stardom. Not many have won that. There's not a single person yet that has won it twice. There's not many wrestlers that even made it to the final twice, with Momo Watanabe having a chance to join that kind of specific roster of maybe 3 or 4 people. I would need to go for history, but I feel like it was Yoko Bito. It would be then, of course, Momo Watanabe, Utami, and I would imagine Mayu did it because Mayu did everything.
You've left out a critical name in Maika being one of the only people to make the finals twice. I'm very shocked.
Jesus, that's embarrassing. And that is like the biggest issue with, of course, Rina's case, that if she wins, the accomplishment is gone and you don't get it back. Because the chances, even under the new management, under the new booking, we have not seen that someone wins the tournament twice. And it doesn't happen this year anyway. So, of course, giving it Rina feels like, okay, maybe it's a bit too early, but I feel like she's so hot in her momentum and so popular at the moment that you just kind of need to go all in with her. And her going over Anou to close the chapter in a different way, with Anou going even more down the losing path, because it would feel a bit rushed, in my opinion, that she was kind of, I wouldn't say depressed. Depressed isn't the right word, but she was kind of sad on her coming into the Starlight Kid match and everything, and she lost it as well, and then just went to 5. So it would kind of feel rushed for what potentially have with the story. And I feel like giving Anou another setback in the final would help her develop more the character than more than just being the cool looking woman that just goes out there and has like no real emotion that you can see. Like you need to get through her to see her emotions. And I feel like her losing this one and maybe showing even more emotions and you know what? Even like starting to tease something with Natsupoi, potentially her turning and everything, and Saya Kamitani corrupting her, they can still lead to a red belt match, of course, with everything. At the same time, of course, you can make the same argument to start a that Rina, of course, has the draw over her, and they can easily run it back at every given moment. But in my opinion, you have the opportunity to elevate someone from a solid position where they are moving slowly up the card to a top level superstar. Meanwhile, Saori Anou on the other side would be someone that has held one of some championship twice already and has been pretty much on the top, near the top at least, or like at least the top 5 of the roster already throughout the past 1.5 years. So that would be, in my opinion, more of a thing, okay, we are just advancing her to the next stage rather than, okay, we are actually elevating someone. But the way I know how Stardom books the 5s, I think Anou still over Rina is the final that we'll go with, but I would go the other way around.
We mentioned the giant lineup of 32 people. We've mentioned the various viable options in this tournament. If you could, is there anyone that didn't quite make it this far or didn't have as strong of a match record? Did anybody else who you watch make it through these sort of round robin battles stand out? And are you expecting more from someone out of this lineup that didn't necessarily make it, very far into the GP?
I can mention 3. One of them is obvious, one of them would be a bit negative, and one of them would be maybe shocking. I would start off with the positive one, and that's Rian. I need to bring it up. I'm sorry. I feel like she has made, like, she's not someone that should have gone through, like, no question about that. But I feel like she has made enough stripes in the ring, as well as shown with the quality against these big names, that she should be more than the loser of this generation. I don't think she's that much worse than Rana Yagami, than Sayaka Kurara, than all of them, that she is so much behind in terms of the kayfabe perspective. Her tournament was pretty good. I liked like nearly all of her matches. I think the one against against Azumi and the one against Starlight Kid especially were like really good. She's the one of the rookies. Like in general, we can mention like all of the rookies. Kurara had a fantastic tournament. Rana was solid. Aya, when she had a chance, stood out. Yuria, of course, had the toughest spot. It's really tough to rank her. And then we come to the negative one, in my opinion. And I still don't get her kind of push. I don't think Hanako was good in this tournament. I feel they are trying hard to make Hanako someone in this company. And I feel like she's one of the few ones that doesn't step up to the occasion to the level that you want her. She was undefeated until day 9 of this tournament. She beat Momo Watanabe in her hometown. She went to a double countout against Suzuki. Well, she defeated Momoko and Rana Yagami, but she was one of the few people undefeated, and it doesn't feel like it coming out of this tournament in terms of her momentum and everything. And I feel like part of that is just that she wasn't able to show what they want from her. For the surprising one, and it's more how creative she has been in this tournament. In my opinion, she was the most creative performer. She was the one that stood out because she made her matches totally different from anyone else on this roster. And she was one that didn't have, she had the lowest amount of in-ring time and everything. But Waka Tsukiyama, she used every minute she had in this tournament and made it special because there are so many wrestlers. I can ask you about at least 5 wrestlers, or 12 to 15 wrestlers, and you couldn't maybe name me 3 matches where they had something standing out. And I feel like Waka went in there in every single match, except for maybe the one against Cinema, because it was maybe a bit too long, where she went in there, had 25 to 30 seconds with them, and just straight up killed it, and in the best way possible. The match against Saya Kamitani is one of my favorite in this entire tournament. It's incredible how creative you can be in such a short time. And it's kind of the role Saki Kashima has had in some of her matches in the 5s in the past, but Waka made an entire tournament out of it. And that she gets her first win, also in a similar fashion, of course, with like a 50-second win over Azusa Inaba, made this on top perfect. Like, she isn't the work rate one in this tournament or anything, but I feel like she had the kind of tournament that made you remember her, even though she had like nothing going on for her outside of it. She finished with like 4 points, had the least amount of in-ring time, like I said, and still made it feel like, okay, she's a big part of this tournament, even with all these fantastic wrestlers in it.
Okay, we need to get to a little bit of the nitty gritty here. So, just for people who may not know, the Stardom 5-Star Grand Prix final, it's taking place on Saturday, August 23rd. Now, this is in Japan. Probably will be earlier for those of you who are listening to this. It's taking place at Oda Ward General Gymnasium in Tokyo. And in addition to the semifinals and final matchup of the 5-star, we're also going to be having an IWGP title match between Saori and Konami. Konami, of course, defeated Saori in the opening night of the 5-star and then went on to at least contribute somewhat to Saori's loss in the quarterfinals against Momo Watanabe. So now the two of these wrestlers are going to try and settle their very, very heated and contested differences. The 5-star final traditionally is one of the largest shows that Stardom puts on. It's a huge deal. It's always worth watching and following. Now, we're talking about Stardom here in 2025, where they have had a ton of commercial success. Ticket sales are going extremely well. Saya Kamitani is bringing so much extra attention to the company. We're seeing audiences that are extremely lively, that are helping to elevate the stock of a number of different wrestlers. Stardom's doing a lot of things right. And this tournament has featured a lot of things that they've done right. So my last question for you, Peps, pertains to this event, this 5-star final. And I'm curious, how important will this final be for Stardom? And what do you think will happen afterwards? Where do you think we can go from here?
I think the most important thing about this show will be, of course, how the final performs and what the booking decision comes out of it. Like, the booking decision, I feel like fans will be happy anyway, in any shape or form, because all 4 of them have a claim, in my opinion, to make the next step. With, of course, we've mentioned Rina, but Azumi and Momo Watanabe both are wrestlers that have been waiting to get an opportunity to speak, especially Momo Watanabe. And Anou, of course, would make the step from being one of the top stars to maybe the top star next to Saya Kamitani in the upcoming months. But the match quality is always with the final that needs to deliver, and that is going to be deciding how we are going to look at this specific show, in my opinion, because a great final would elevate a lot, not only the wrestlers itself, but also the tournament. A disappointing final would take away potential momentum that either the winner and the finalists could take out of it. Because in the worst case, this completely falls flat, and I don't think that happens, to mention that, and they barely get crowd reaction and everything, and it comes out as a disappointing match. It, of course, would be the worst case. In the best case, you come out as maybe not the best tournament match, because I don't think that is necessarily what they need to do, but a great match where people are happy with what happened, the crowd being into it, would be the best case. And that would be what would help Stardom to create whatever storyline you're going to out of it. With Bea Priestley challenging at the next big show, kind of becomes interesting when they're going to cash in the title shot, because it literally can just defend. Like, it can happen anywhere. We have seen that. And the closer we get to the Sumo Hall, the bigger the chance get that the match happens as well. But until then, we have 4 more months that they need to fill. So that will be interesting.
The information you provided today on this has been really, really eye-opening. And I'm curious, Peps, can you let people know what you're up to, where they can find you, and who you are?
Yeah, of course. I feel like most people should know me, if they know me from Twitter, from @Pepswrestling, where I pretty much tweet about everything I'm watching. If it's some old Joshi from the 90s, I'm currently at Gaia in the year 2000, where they have like the Crush Girls reunion going on and everything, where I'm diving into. And meanwhile, of course, you mentioned it, the stuff I'm doing on YouTube, where I have covered every single show and every single match of the G1 Climax. There was a lot of time that went into that. And I'm going to try to dissect some of the stuff that comes out of it. And especially, I want to do a video that I'm trying to write a script about right now, about the House of Torture and how good they are actually, and how important or the opposite they are for the product, and what the actual fan reactions are and everything, as well as, of course, the in general, the booking of the New Japan. And that is like the two big projects that I have going on right now, where I do the research and everything. Because if I do something, then I want to do it with stats and everything to prove my points, because otherwise I can just claim whatever I want. But I want to show that I'm correct. At the same time, I try to do a lot of different things here as well, and we'll try to figure out stuff. I'm on flying to the UK on Friday, so I will be at Forbidden Door. I hope I see a cool Stardom Wrestling live there. We have yet to know who it is, but based on who it could be, I would imagine it will be Shuri or someone like that, which would be fantastic. So there's that.
Well, happy travels to you. I hope to chat with you again, especially for some of these bigger Stardom shows, because like I said, I think you have a lot to offer in terms of how you look at things and how you analyze things. It's very in depth. So I always appreciate it. So thank you very much, Peps. And thanks everyone for watching.